Welcome to my channel. I'm so glad you're here. This story was inspired by an actual event from a little old lady that I know and love. I hope you enjoy it. The $5 bill. One crisp autumn day in the Pacific Northwest, a sweet little old lady was taking her daily walk. Is she really old, though? She was born in 1946, so maybe not old, as time is fluid and age does not always match the attitude and behavior of someone based solely on the calendar. But in this case, you can trust me, she was old. That sweet little old lady was about to do something random, inspired, and maybe even divine. She was taking her daily walk, and she took the corner slowly to ensure she would not lose her balance and fall down. You see, that was starting to happen, like her own legs were no longer rooting for her and moving seemingly on their own. So on her daily walk to fight boredom, she took her steps very carefully. She noticed the beauty of the leaves turning colors, that crisp feeling in the air that can only mean autumn, and she strolled along her way. She had been through a lot in her life, and many of the tragedies in her life had happened in the autumn. She knew this and would talk to herself about the memory of her own body. Our bodies do have memory. The overwhelming chemicals and emotions can trigger a reaction, like a jolt in the mind, and we may not even be aware of it. But I bet you knew that already. Each autumn she would remind herself. However, this autumn, for some reason, she was not able to talk herself out of it. There was that feeling of unsteadiness again, but she powered through and kept on walking. She had a thought that came from nowhere, she told me later, and that thought was to put a $5 bill in the grass. She didn't really have $5 to spare, but it was such a strong feeling that she took the time, in a big and beautiful section of grass right off the sidewalk, to hide a $5 bill. As she did it, she thought about who might find it, how much fun it had been through her own life to find unexpected money. You know, when you look in your purse or in your pocket and find $5, it's the best. For some reason on that crisp autumn day, she wanted someone else to have that same feeling. Was it divinely inspired? I like to think it was divine, because of what could happen next. The next day, that sweet little old lady again fought her betraying legs and her betraying energy and headed out for her daily walk. She walked by the beautiful patch of grass, and the $5 bill was still there. She was a bit shocked to see it, but did not pick it up. She walked on by with her head held high and hoped someone who needed it would find it. The third day, again she fought through her pain and walked her daily walk past that patch of grass. The $5 bill was still there. She could hardly believe it, but a smile came across her face, and she went on her way. Day 4, she was interested to see if it was still there. In the excitement of her little, seemingly divine experiment, her legs seemed to hurt less, and her step had a little bounce in it. She turned the corner, and the $5 bill was gone. She smiled and thought about who had found it, what they had felt or thought when they did. Mind you, it was only a $5 bill and could not buy much any more, like when she was young. She was born right after the war, when babies were being born in numbers higher than any other time in the history that we know to be true. She kept that little skip in her step and went on her way to her weekly visit to the thrift shop. What that little old lady didn't know was what sequence of events she may have triggered with that random act. Would you like to know who found that $5 bill? Maybe it was an elderly gentleman, also born after the war, that had lost his wife and was taking a walk, thinking about that loss, the sweetness of his life gone, and how he was just going through the motions. He knew his wife would want him to move on, to love again, but he needed a sign. He passed that patch of tall green grass, and there, in what clearly was a little hiding spot, was a $5 bill. He struggled with his cane to pick it up, and when he did, he flashed back to his first date with the love of his life. They had gone to an ice cream parlor and had shared a large shake and some French fries that cost just $5. He held that found $5 bill in his hand and smiled. He had not smiled, for real, you know, the smile that goes all the way to your eyes, in a very, very long time. As he walked away from that patch of grass, a little bounce came into his step. There had been something he had wanted to do, was meaning to do, and today was the day. That found $5 bill was the sign he had been wishing for, so he headed on his way to the thrift shop. Maybe, instead of the old man, a little boy found the $5 bill. A little boy who has just gone through a very difficult 3 years, like all of us, and he knows his mother lost her job and does not have a lot of money. Every day after school he takes a detour to the local thrift shop. There in the window of that thrift shop is a little plastic helicopter that he would very much like to have. He dares not ask his mother, for he knows not only does she not have the money, but that she is sad about Daddy. Daddy died. He went to Afghanistan and was hit by a mortar. He thinks that is the right word, but he really wants that helicopter. You see, Daddy was in the Air Force and he flew helicopters, and the little boy was starting to lose the memory of his dad. He had a picture of his dad, and in the picture his dad is standing next to what Daddy said was a Black Hawk helicopter. He thinks about his dad and that little helicopter in the thrift shop window every day. Today, on his way back from his daily window shopping, he takes a different turn. He realizes it when the signs are different. He doesn't get scared. It's daylight, and he has an emergency cell phone that the government gave his mama for him. He skips along knowing that the next street will be familiar. He comes to a big patch of grass. He doesn't notice at first, but there it must clearly be a hiding spot, is a green $5 bill. He does a double take. Could it be, really, the $5 he needs to buy the little plastic helicopter in the window of the local thrift shop? It is! He bends down, picks it up, and grasps it, while his heart skips a beat, and he just can't wait to get back to the thrift shop. He takes off running, turns the corner, and almost knocks over a little old lady. He says, "Excuse me, ma'am, but I've got to go buy something that reminds me of my dad." If that little boy found the $5 bill, I know he really would run off to the thrift shop and buy that plastic helicopter. But what if someone else found the $5 bill? Maybe it was a nurse, exhausted after a long shift and a bit deflated by the healthcare system, the stress of the long hours and having to work to provide her family, but knowing all the while she was missing so much of their lives. You know, that delicate balance of being a working professional and a mother? The balance that we think we can accomplish, but deep down we know we are teetering, and with time we could look back with regret and wish we could make up for that time, work less, enjoy more, and just take a second to go back. 1 second to go back and hold our children, to feel their little hands in ours, and to be in the moment. But that is not how time works, and we cannot go back, and she knows it as she walks down the sidewalk from work. She thinks to herself, is this all there is? And then she looks down, and in a lovely patch of grass is a $5 bill. She picks it up, and her mind flashes back to when she was a waitress, barely making ends meet, no children yet, but dreams of her future, and how many times there was a $5 tip on the table. She thought of that one customer, the one who always came in, and how each day he would come in, request her section, and leave a $5 tip. After a few weeks, she started to look forward to his daily visit, the light and easy conversation, and the undeniable attraction, at least on her part. She had begun to look for him, to anticipate his patronage, and one day he didn't come. It set off her entire day, but she went on with her shift. When he didn't come back the second day, she started to worry. He had been coming every day for over a year, and she couldn't help but notice his absence. She finished her shift and left to go home. As she got her keys out, she saw him. He was standing by her car with flowers and a shy smile on his face. He told her that he had loved her since the moment he saw her, and each day talking with her was all he looked forward to, and he wanted to know if she would go to dinner with him. She did. They courted and were married a year later. As she held that found $5 bill, a sense of love, like a warm blanket, spread over her body, and she thought of their early life together, when their children were born, and suddenly she couldn't wait to get home to see him, to see their children, to hold him, and to tell him how much she loved him. She started to walk faster, and then started to lightly jog. As she got closer, she broke out into a full run, forgetting how exhausted she was. She opened the front door, called his name, and wrapped into his familiar, loving, kind, and supportive arms. She had forgotten. She had gotten into a funk, a grind, a routine. And suddenly now she remembered how wonderful her life was, how much they had been through, and how much more they had to look forward to. She took her children into their hug and cried with joy and relief, as she had snapped out of it in time. She looked at her husband and told him how much she loved and appreciated him. He smiled shyly and said, "I'm glad you're back. I've been waiting for you." I like the idea that the nurse found the $5 bill, but could it have been a depressed teenage girl? She was on her way home from school. She felt isolated, alone. The kids were mean. She didn't like her classes, and to make it even worse, she was afraid her parents were going to get divorced. The idea of them divorcing was just too much for her. Sometimes she thought that it must be her fault. She was sure it was. She didn't want to go home. Her mama cried all the time, and she just didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to help her mother, and felt helpless, and also bad that she wasn't able to express her feelings to her mother. Her mother was wonderful. Her mother was supportive, kind, loving, and she knew that her mother loved her. That day she walked slowly with a heavy backpack filled with her books and homework, the backpack feeling as heavy as her heart. She had nowhere to go, nowhere she wanted to be, so she was taking her time. She let her mind wander, and as she passed a beautiful patch of tall green grass, she saw a $5 bill. It was exciting. She thought it might not be real at first, but it was. She picked it up and had an idea. She would buy something for her mother. She turned around and picked up her pace. The thrift shop would have something. She forgot about the weight of her backpack and skipped down the street. When she got to the thrift shop, it was full of all kinds of people. There was a little old man with a cane, a little old lady moving slowly, and a very excited young boy. She looked in the jewelry section. Her mother just loved jewelry, and she found a piece she just knew her mother would love. She took it to the counter and felt a feeling. Was it hope? A feeling she had not felt in so long, and a smile started to form. She had not smiled in so long. She had forgotten what it felt like. The lady packaged the necklace, and she headed home. She was looking forward to going home for the first time in a long time. Hope. Yes, that is what it was. Her mom would know that she loved her, and all would be well. She wasn't that naive, though, but she had to do something. The weight of her backpack totally forgotten, she ran the rest of the way home, ran through the front door, smiling. That teenage girl may have found the $5 bill. Let's hope so. But what if it was an unemployed businessman? A man disillusioned with life. He was trying so hard to find gainful employment. You see, he lost his job like so many others, and he wasn't sure what he was going to do. The money was running out, and he felt deflated after so many resumes and interviews leading to no job offer. He walked down the sidewalk trying to hold his head high, telling himself he would find a job, a great one, soon, but he didn't really believe it. His pace was slow, and his mind was filled with thoughts of fear and lack. He looked to his right, and he saw a $5 bill in a patch of grass. He picked it up and thought, well, this could be a sign. What if there is more? He picked up his pace. He was going to get a cup of coffee and newspaper and start his job search over. This just had to be the sign, and he would not give up. The universe had always provided him, and even when he was so low, something always came at just the right time. That $5 bill was his sign. He stuffed it into his suit pocket, put his shoulders back, and headed to the little cafe by the thrift shop. He walked in and saw a few tables filled with professionals and a few others with families enjoying ice cream. He picked up the wanted section of the paper, chose a table in the back. He ordered coffee from the waitress and opened the newspaper. He then looked around and listened to the conversations. The table with the professionals was filled with people talking about sales, how they were down, how hard it was to find good employees, and that they needed to brainstorm ideas. They had a great product, but needed some help and new ideas to be successful in the new reality of the economy. This perked the man's ears, and he had an idea. He took the last sip of his coffee, straightened his tie, laid the $5 bill on the table for the waitress, and walked over to the group of professionals. He said, "Hi, I couldn't help but overhear. My name is Matthew. I'm a salesman, and I have some great ideas." That $5 bill could have been the sign the unemployed salesman needed. Let's hope so. But maybe it was found by a bus driver instead. He had been driving the bus line for years and dealing with all kinds of people and all kinds of issues. Each day, getting up before the sun, driving to the bus depot, and starting his route. Every day, blending into the next, traffic, angry passengers, loving passengers, kind, old, young, every race and creed, same old, same old. He did love his job. That was not the problem. The problem was he had lost all his passion. He knew he had to do more, be more, help more, but he just didn't know how. He needed a sign. He even asked for one all the time. One afternoon he took his break at a different stop. He turned the out-of-service sign off and got out. He stretched, smelled the crisp autumn air, and he saw a cute little old lady slowly walking down the sidewalk, and she was smiling. He wondered to himself why she was smiling, but he just shrugged his shoulders and stretched his legs. Sitting all day was tough on him, so he really took advantage of these breaks to pace back and forth and get his blood flowing. He was kicking in the grass, and he kicked up a $5 bill. It floated in the air for a second. He was sure it would fly away, but it settled right by his foot. As he bent down to pick it up, it blew away before he could catch it. He just couldn't believe it. The wind caught it just right, and it blew away. He chased it, as he really wanted that $5 bill now, and it kept blowing further, rising in the air, seeming to come down, and then taking off again. His bus was locked, and he had some more time on his break, so he chased that $5 bill down the block. The $5 bill took a turn. The wind was really picking up, and he went around the corner, just sure he could catch it. Finally, the wind turned in his favor, and the $5 bill landed close to his foot. He stamped down on it, as he wasn't going to risk it blowing away again, and as he bent over, from the corner of his eye he saw a sign. It read, "We need you. Volunteers, please inquire within." He hadn't thought of volunteering, but maybe that was what he needed. He wanted to give back, and maybe this was his sign. He wasn't sure, but he placed that found $5 bill in his shirt pocket, crossed the street, making sure to look both ways first, and he opened the door of the local food bank. That lovely old lady was so happy someone had found her $5 bill. Since she had left it in the lush grass, the darkness and body memory lifted from her, and her step was lighter, her pain lessened, and she felt better about everything, really. Winter was her least favorite, but she decided to enjoy the autumn weather, the sunshine, and the colors. She headed to the thrift shop like she had every Friday afternoon for the past 6 months. As she was walking, a little boy came rushing around the corner and almost knocked her over. He apologized, and no harm done. She chuckled under her breath at the youth, and for a moment wished she could go back just for a second and be so spry. She made her way, slow but steady, down the block, past the cafe filled with professionals and a handsome man standing near a table with a smile on his face. She saw a lady who had to be a health professional, sitting with her family, laughing and smiling. She smiled too, and opened the door to the thrift shop. Inside was that same little boy. He was so excited she could feel it across the room. He was mumbling something about his dad and helicopters and mortars and his mom. She could feel his joy, and that just made her smile. She also saw a teenage girl with a heavy backpack buying something at the counter, and the old man with a cane. She had seen that same nice old man every week for the past 6 months, and she was starting to look forward to it. They always smiled at each other and said hello. Today, his smile was bigger. His smile went all the way to his eyes, and he cleared his throat and said to her, "I've seen you every Friday for the past 6 months. My name is John. I know we don't know each other, and we have only smiled and said hello, but I've been building up the courage, and today I got a sign. So I want to ask you if you'd like to go next door with me and get some ice cream." The little old lady smiled and said yes. The end.